We now continue with Smurf.
I work for a special branch of the US government that has never been widely publicized, and the only people who have knowledge of it already work in the government, specifically the CIA. We are technically a subdivision of the CIA, and it encompasses a lot of agents, mostly scientists. While most of us are brought in for our specializations in different areas of science, psychology being a primary target, we are all given at least basic military training, with many opting for more specialized training once being employed for a certain amount of time. I think you know more than enough to get the gist, and I will not be clarifying on anything else. I am not asking for your belief, I'm just asking for you to pay attention and to cast your judgment at the end. Basically, the cat is already mostly out of the bag. This is regarding the Miami Mall alien incident. We have seen the uptick in witnesses coming out and sharing their stories, drumming up new discussion online, and it is clear that it will not be long until the pen boils over, and so here I am, getting ahead of it. While I am not technically allowed to be disclosing this, the disclosure does not matter anymore. I want to ease my conscience while also helping you understand. This all started with a project that I will not be going into too many details about, otherwise the explanation will confuse you, become too convoluted, and I would have to explain years of man-hours of research and work and theorems, and that is not the most important thing here. Essentially, this specific project has been researching a very specific phenomena, which if you research alongside historic accounts, has actually been happening on Earth since man started written records, possibly for even longer. This is to do with breaches on Earth, more specifically, breaches in the fabric of the Earth. Now, I know this will sound like sci-fi mumbo-jumbo, and our understanding of it is still very limited too. This is not something we can control or manipulate, and it is not about that. This is about the manipulation of something else, those same aliens, if you want to call them that caused the chaos at the Bayside Marketplace in Miami. There are these places across Earth that are commonly referred to as thin places, where for one reason or another, the boundary of Earth is weak and can be breached. I will leave it there for simplicity. This has caused all kinds of phenomena over the years. It's the reason behind accounts of people accidentally slipping into the past for brief periods of time, missing persons cases where there is not a trace of the person, and also the reason why there are so many accounts of so-called cryptids. A lot of them are bullshit made up by teenagers, of course, but not all of them. Most of these breaches are unrelated, but that changed around 6 years ago in the year 2020. We actually make contact with these alien creatures. Before this meeting, we had no way to truly track them. This happened at a black site out in the middle of nowhere, Mexico. We have made a breakthrough recently and have been tracking some strange phenomena and signatures. We were attempting to create a small breach ourselves, which ended in catastrophic failure, and it obviously drew the attention of these things. It was not long before they found us and broke their way through into the black site. I am not talking about strolling up through a well-defended and heavily armed compound. I mean they ripped their way through. It is hard to even describe. It started with this just like tiny little tear that was suspended in the air. I saw the air ripple and shimmer like it was water and saw this tiny little crack that was almost suspended in midair. It was in the same place we had attempted our own breach. We saw these long fingers breach the seal and start to physically rip open the air, and the feeling is a hard one to describe. The air in the room felt like it was all sucked out, even though I could still breathe. My vision became blurry and unstable. My memories once these aliens breach through is fragmented and almost feels like a dream in some places. It's like the physical presence of the breach causes your memory to become unstable and stops your brain from storing new memories properly. So this is more of a collage of different things stitched together that multiple agents witnessed at the time. These figures were not as described in other accounts. They were actually very small beings. The problem is that they were capable of manipulating their presence in the physical space on Earth. I don't know if they are capable of doing this wherever they came from, but they can manipulate their own bodies, human bodies, buildings, gravity, etc. We found this out very quickly. The second that we saw them breach, we were ordered to respond with hostile force. The bullets did not hurt them. They looked like they made contact, but I'm not sure how much I can trust my eyes in these situations in retrospect. The aliens, it's hard to give them a proper physical description, because when looking at them, it was hard to really see them, combined with the fact that they can manipulate their own bodies and how they appear to other people. It was like I was looking, but my eyes refused to fully focus on them. The focus would drift to my peripheral vision. Parts of them would become blurry and almost see-through, if that makes sense. When they appeared, they were probably around 5 feet tall, but then grew to occupy almost the entire height of the room that we were in, so we were always looking upwards. They were mostly grey, but with these strange black markings across their body, like the arms and head and legs, almost like a tribal tattoo, but it was just their skin. Their feet were more like cinder blocks rather than regular human feet. It was like a cinder block with multiple prongs that I guess you could call toes, but they were more like claws. Not even claws, more like straight points that just went through whatever material they stood on. I remember them stepping through the tear and the ground cracking underneath them from the sheer weight and from the piercing of the ground. Their eyes were another notable feature. They were this strange, almost Vanta black that always caused you to see a reflection of yourself and the room inside of them. Staring at them made me confused. The one time my eyes met them, when I realized what was happening again, a large unit of time had passed. It made me disoriented and nauseous just by looking at them. The agents who fired on them were quickly put down, and we were ordered to stop firing since it became clear that it was useless. Most were just, I don't know how to describe it, erased from existence. They just turned into piles of ash, essentially, faster than my eyes could really comprehend. The final one, though, it was almost like a game, a display, or a warning. From his head, I saw this man start to unravel, if that makes sense. I saw his skin start to unravel off of his head into this stringy substance bit by bit, and his screams of agony I can still hear in my head. I could not even look away. I just saw his skin peeled off in a spiral, like an orange, until his body was just bits on the ground. When they spoke to us all at once. Not out loud, but in our heads. It hurt really badly. It made my head hurt. I felt my nose start bleeding when they talked inside my head, and I thought that I might pass out. They never gave any of us a chance to talk back to them, and I can't say they made a lot of sense either. And again, I only remember fragments, so this recollection is a collage of what a lot of people there remembered. They told us that the Earth was, wrong. I remember that exact word, verbatim. They said something about us being trapped here and being exploited, and that it was their duty to free worlds like ours. Again, free was the exact word they used. They said something about how they have been trying for years, as long as humans have existed. They have tried to take us one by one, but it is too slow and too ineffective. They said something about breaking the veil and making people see things they shouldn't, so that they question their reality on Earth. That one was told to us by a colleague. That is not something I ever heard. They said something about wanting humans to revolt and accept freedom and leave Earth and let it rot. They said they wanted to rip a bigger hole to show people that this world is not real, as they put it. We have no idea if they were telling the truth, but they seemed convinced by it at the very least. Then one of them started rambling on about how they don't want to hurt anyone, and that they only responded with violence because that is what was shown to them first. They left the way they came. They did not kill anyone else, but we were left with our memories incomplete and distorted. Everyone, and I mean everyone that was present, from the top down, underwent psychological evaluation over the next few days. We were subject to memory tests, stress tests, and some of us were even isolated. We were grilled and all wrote up reports. As you can imagine, it was rare for them to all add up. Everyone had different descriptions of the events, what exactly happened, and who was actually present at the time. One guy they could not even get to talk anymore. He was found in a corner shaking, with vomit all over himself, and he was just cradling his knees and rocking back and forth. He tried to talk, but he couldn't. He was mute for months after that, and had to be medically retired. Explaining that to his family in a way that did not draw suspicion was difficult, to say the least. The events of that day did not leave the building, aside from the higher-ups who needed to know, They actually locked the black site down for about a week straight in the aftermath, and no one was allowed to leave. I didn't get to take a shower that entire week, and I was starving and craving some real food. Aside from smaller, unrelated anomalies, we did not manage to track anything again until the year 2021. This next part comes directly from an agent in the field and was also pieced together for reports that we were given. He was stationed in Las Vegas and was sent to respond on the night that this happened. We had received reports in the area about aliens landing in someone's yard, forming crop circles, and then intimidating people before disappearing from sight. I was dispatched, along with a team of other agents, around 4 of us in total, and we arrived at one property very quickly, and the sight that we witnessed was horrible, to say the least. The response was minimal, partially because we were not expecting what we saw. We were not fully aware it was the same alien things at this time, and partially because this was not the only report that we had. I think we received a total of 5 reports that night. We would receive reports of something similar, but unrelated, in 2023 as well. When we showed up to this house that was on the outskirts of Moapa Valley, it was a complete wreck. The house had already been cordoned off by police, and nearby residents had to be hushed by police and kept off of the site. Some woman was screaming about a murder. The first thing we noticed was the yard. There were heavy marks, and it looked like something had landed in the yard and left a heavy impact. The imprint was 2 circles, with one inside the other, along with 3 prongs, I guess you could say. There were 3 rectangles that were attached to these circles that went around it, and had one sharp point in the center of them. It was hard to breathe in the area even though we were outside with plenty of ventilation, and I remember choking really hard and coughing something up. We ended up having to wear gas masks in order to search the property. The front window to the house was smashed, but it did not look to have been struck with anything physical. We did not have to look far to find the bodies, 3 in total. 4 people were registered as living here, which we confirmed with the hysterical neighbor, but we could not find a trace of the 4th person anywhere. The first person we found in the kitchen, slumped over an open drawer, where it looked like they had attempted to grab a kitchen knife. Their fingers were still clinging to it, even after passing away. How do I describe this in a way that makes sense? The skull of this person had been excavated. At the top of the head, the hair had been zapped or scorched away entirely, and where skin should be, there was just emptiness. The skull looked like it had been crushed to the point of bone snapping and breaking until a piece of it just wrenched apart, like cracking open an egg. That is what the top of this person's head looked like, a cracked egg. There were no marks or signs of trauma on any other parts of this person's body. I wish this was not true, but the remains of this person's head, it was, well, only partially empty. There was blood that had turned this weird shade of red that was so dark it looked almost black. It was just sitting in this person's skull like a shallow puddle. It looked almost watered down, if that makes sense. Even with the gas mask, we could smell something absolutely horrible. It's like it just seeped through anyway, like we could smell it through our skin, if that made sense. The brain was mostly gone. By mostly, I mean that there were only fragments of it slopped against both sides of his head, floating around in a puddle of watered down blood that looked like some kind of cereal. We have no idea the reason for this. The aliens told us they were attempting to free people. They told us that they would only respond to violence with violence. They had no need to kill people in such a way. The next person we found in a bedroom upstairs. He was still suspended in midair and pinned to a wall. We don't understand why or how. There was blood all over the floor and soaked into the carpet. The person had their arms out, as if they were pinned to a cross. We suspect that this was a form of mockery. The person seemed to have their eyes removed from their sockets, but there was no sign of them anywhere nearby. He was also completely stripped of his skin, like every single limb and place on his body was completely degloved, for lack of a better word. Parts of his insides had long since fallen out of place, and the blood had drained out of him and seeped into the carpet. There was not a single inch of his body left unscathed. Again, they had no reason to do this, no motive at all. It was at this point that I heard screams, followed by rapid gunfire. We were lucky that the immediate area had been cleared of civilians and that a cover story had been given by police. We quickly realized that these aliens had actually never left. I saw one of them suddenly appear in the corner of the room. It looked like they uncloaked and suddenly made themselves visible, rather than tearing a hole to enter. As soon as it appeared, I was frozen on the spot, and every part of my body felt 100 times heavier, and as much as I tried to resist, I slowly slumped to the ground onto my belly while still feeling the pressure coming down on me. I felt like my head was going to pop at any moment. This alien spoke to me, but only briefly, and a lot of what it was saying did not make sense. It communicated in the same way as the first time, directly in my head, without even moving. Every time it talked, I felt this jolt of electricity move throughout my body, and it felt like I was being tased. Every single time it spoke, I felt the pressure in my head grow stronger and hurt so badly. I could barely focus on the words through the pain. I could not even speak back. It rambled on about how the humans refused to be saved, aside from one of them, that they rejected the aliens in a disrespectful way, and so they freed them the only other way that they could. He said something about salvaging them for parts, which doesn't make sense. They can go wherever they want and do whatever they want, so what use would they have for human parts? After that, they disappeared, and I was let go, but not before being told to deliver a message. A message that humans should stop intervening and accept being free. That they should reject the prison that we live in. I discovered all of my colleagues dead, in similar gruesome ways to the residents of the home. I'm sure you're all already familiar with what happened at the Bayside Marketplace on January 1st, 2024, so I will try not to waste too much time here. For those unfamiliar, I will quickly summarize. A police report was filed and officers were quickly dispatched. Officially, there was a disturbance, reports of teenagers fighting, shooting off fireworks, and even the presence of a firearm was reported by news outlets. Within minutes, hundreds of officers, and let me be clear, the vast majority of these were not Miami police officers, arrived at the scene. There is a reason why no one can agree on what really happened there, why each news outlet reports a completely different thing, and why all of these accounts are just now beginning to trickle out. There is a reason why every single witness testimony describes the layout of the mall in a different way, why the aliens are reported to have done different things to people and have different goals. Regarding the news reporting, 99% of that is down to us. The blacklisting of the topic on social media, the erasure of any key information, accounts being shadow banned for discussing it. There is a reason that one day it was the most spoken about topic on social media, and the next day there was no trace of it, and people appeared to have just wiped it from their memories. Again, part of this was us, and part of this was due to the breach. We were tracking anomalies, and we knew that this breach was going to take place. That is why so many officers were ready to turn up in minutes for something that seemed so small on the surface. Only we had no way of stopping it. We could not stop the breach like we planned. We were trying to figure out a way to stop it from opening or to close it afterwards, but it was not possible. This is because these aliens did not just invade the Bayside Marketplace on January 1st, 2024. They invaded on January 1st, 2022, January 1st, 2023, and January 1st, 2024, all at the same time. We have no real understanding of how they possibly did this. It's why memories surrounding this event are so messed up and fractured and nonsensical. The sheer instability of this event caused the entire event to not make sense to anyone. It's why one account describes the aliens trying to free people and only reacting with violence against officers when fired upon, whereas another account describes these aliens as invading the minds and memories of civilians and corrupting them, scrambling their brains and trapping them in their own minds in fake worlds for what seems like years and waking up with false memories, with their memories altered. Some reports report no deaths, some report mass casualties, and somehow these all did and did not happen, which I know does not make sense, and I don't know any other way to explain it other than that. All I know is that many humans were freed, as these beings describe it, and many agents and officers were killed. But some of them are still alive, which again, does not make sense. Some people cease to exist. We have records of people on file, of people who no one can remember, as if they never existed in the first place. There are people who were reported to have been killed in various different and horrible ways who are still, to this day, walking around. It's why accounts are only coming out so much time later and are always fractured and riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies. What we do know to be true, and that we witnessed on CCTV footage, is that these aliens can alter their own form in many different ways. We witnessed some of them assuming the identities of corpses that were lying on the ground. We witnessed some of these beings pretending to be dead civilians so that they could easily slip by unnoticed. For what purpose they did that still evades us. It's not like they needed to do this to be able to do things unimpeded. There are only two reasons I can think of that they did this off of the top of my head, and both of them are terrifying to me. They either did it to blend in and act covertly and carry out their goals without leaving a trace, or they did it for fun. They did it because they could. Neither of those reasons are preferable. I'm sorry this part is rambly and probably does not make that much sense unless you've read the who knows how many accounts that have been posted by now already. I hope that in conjunction with the other things that I tell you, the reality of the matter starts to become apparent. This brings me to probably the most important part of all of this. We did not have another breach in the year 2025, but we did have another breach recently, in January of 2026, and aside from the incident at Bayside Marketplace, it is the most direct and horrific we have ever seen. This actually happened in Venezuela, in a relatively small village, in a location of the country that I will not be specifying. I was sent myself with a team of many people, as we had managed to track an anomaly shortly beforehand, which alerted us to this breach. The cover story was already perfectly in place, and so we did not have to worry about anyone questioning our presence in the country, and our sudden invasion, as it would probably appear to the residents. The village was already in the middle of being breached when we reached it. It's weird because from the outside looking in, the village looked normal, but the second that you got close enough, you could see the chaos that had been caused. It's like reality had been distorted, and the village had some kind of bubble around it, and the second you cross the threshold, reality appears as it actually is. There were people running and screaming. Some of them were frozen in place. Some were convulsing on the floor, and there was lots of blood. I saw this from afar, as it was not my job to engage in combat or extract any civilians. I was only there to observe from afar and note down my findings. So again, this is a combination of what I saw, along with verbal reports from those who reported back. Again, when these breaches happen, your memories become kind of distorted, so I only remember flashes. I remember soldiers going and trying to engage and to help people, but they were just reduced to nothing. I saw one soldier. 1 second he was firing his weapon, and the next, I saw him actually liquefy. I heard the scream, it was that loud, and it was like he was being dissolved by some kind of acid, but from the inside. I saw his arms being eaten away by something that I could not actually see, before being reduced to nothing, and then this weird black and viscous liquid pouring out from where the arms had been. I remember seeing his face being melted, bit by bit, one eye turning into liquid that just sat in a puddle in his eye socket, and it looked corrosive and had steam coming from it. By the end, he was just a puddle. I remember at one point, I saw people lifting in the air. Not just a couple of people, but it looked to be everyone alive still left in the village that was still in the vicinity of the aliens. I watched them slowly lift up and up and up until they were suspended in midair, wriggling and writhing and clearly in some kind of severe pain from this. The sky was literally a different color at this point, and I don't know, everything just felt unstable. The hole that I could see, it was bigger than any other I had seen before. They were lifted up to one of the aliens, who was now insanely tall at this point, and he talked to them. I know that he talked to them, because I heard it inside my head too. It's like they were broadcasting to every single brain in the immediate area. He offered the people who were floating a choice. It told them that they tried to be peaceful, but that now, this was the only way to free them. They could either accept and be freed from what he called this prison, or be left behind. I guess some people were willing to go. I saw them float up higher and higher until they just vanished right in front of me. One second they were there, squirming, and the next, I could not see them anymore. The others who were left behind, I saw them just pop, one by one by one. I don't know how else I can really put this. One soldier, I saw him literally just expand suddenly. All of his body and head and limbs just expanded in a single instant, and then pop. It was loud too. It sounded like fireworks going off. It was so loud. Within a couple of minutes, there was just blood, and the last remaining little bits of people raining down from the sky. There was so much of it. It went on for what seemed like forever. The soldiers who survived, they experienced severe time distortions and some kind of interference with their memories. One soldier reported that he had been stuck in some kind of different place for what he felt was thousands of years in his head, falling to his death. One we found in a trance-like state. His brain was literally mush. He had essentially regressed to the mental state of a 3-year-old and could not even form proper sentences anymore. Other soldiers described seeing completely different things. One told us that he had seen a beam of light shine down from the sky. It hit the ground in front of him, encircled, and searched around for a few moments before finally falling on him. He described feeling such an intense feeling of euphoria and so blissful. He said that in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered to him, and that he would have been okay with anything happening. The light eventually moved off of him, and this made him panic. He ran after it as it slipped away from him, begging for it to come back. He said he could not live without it, that he would do anything. When we found him, he was clawing at his own face, and even managed to gouge out one of his own eyes before we could stop him. Once we evac'd him and were able to give him medical attention, he recovered surprisingly quickly. One soldier reported that he was transported to some kind of alternate world. He said one second he was aiming a gun at these things, and the next, he was back at home with his wife and kids. It was around 7 years prior, before he took this job. He said he lived an entire 7 years in this world. Things started out almost utopian. Nothing ever went wrong. Everything he did was a success, and his business flourished. No matter what he did, it always turned out to be the right thing to do. But eventually, the cracks started to form. People would just stop existing. People would be there one day, and the next, they would slip out of reality. This soldier would be the only one who could remember them. Natural disasters started occurring more and more. He discovered that parts of the world did not exist anymore. One day he woke up, and Europe just was not a thing anymore. Not that it had been destroyed or anything, but that the world had always just been 6 continents. Anomalies like this continued. People and places kept vanishing until his city was the last city left in existence, and he told me that the last day he was there, these things came to see him. They made him watch as they distorted reality in front of him and tortured his wife and kids. They told him that because of his evil violence and the violence of mankind, his wife and children would never be free from this prison, and he watched the aliens pull them apart, quite literally, limb from limb. The soldier was pinned down, and the wife and the children would be forced to ascend into the air, and then their arms would be pulled and stretched in an impossible way until, click, they just gave in, and their limbs were no longer in their sockets, and all they could do was scream as blood poured out. And this continued for every body part, until he had to watch their heads ripped from their neck as their necks were stretched until he heard a horrible pop and a wet squelch, and then he was killed in the same way. The cover-up in the village following this was the easy part. It was relatively small and remote. We still have people stationed there, and the cleanup is still ongoing. The problem is that we do not know where they will breach next and when. We do not know what they really mean by Earth being a prison. We do not know where people are taken when they are freed. I really do not know if we can believe what they say. That's basically it. I know it sounds like some kind of fantastical sci-fi story conjured up by a teenager, and I can scarcely believe these things myself. Just be vigilant. There are ways to find out why and how these things are happening. The way things are reported in the news, there are always tells. It's unlikely you will ever encounter these things yourself. For now, at least. If you do, then I do not have any advice. There is no amount of cover-ups that can hide this anymore. I feel guilty for keeping this to myself for so long. I know I am screwed. Pray for me. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the stories. The goal for the channel is 100k, so please subscribe, like, and leave a comment because it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching.